When Mel Brooks was 13, The Wizard of Oz was released. He was above the target audience age. Brooks was 37 when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. He was 51 when Star Wars hit theaters. And he was 55 when he directed a little film called History of the World Part 1. 42 years later, he's still alive, he's still making films, and he's just come back for the sequel. History of the World is far from Brooks' most famous work. That title would likely go to The Producers, Young Frankenstein, or Blazing Saddles. The fact of the matter is, Mel Brooks was on fire in the late 60s and early 70s. His style of comedy was crude. It was offensive, and it was a stark departure from the more academic comedy of decades prior. Brooks' influence on comedy extended throughout the 80s, with films like Airplane and Naked Gun, into the worlds of Monty Python and even Saturday Night Live. Brooks was one of the key figures of the spoof film, a film that satirizes and pokes fun at something we already know and cherish. Blazing Saddles spoofed the Western and its racist tendencies. High Anxiety tackled Hitchcockian thrillers and asked, what if the dashing hero in a Hitchcock film were just bumbling Mel Brooks? Spaceballs was 90 minutes of Star Wars satire. Nobody did it better than Mel, but almost everyone tried. And so, after spoofing westerns, horror, and thrillers, all eyes were on Brooks. What movie genre will he tackle next? The answer? None of them. Brooks set his sights on something much larger than the film genre. He was going to spoof, well, everything. History of the World Part 1 was Brooks' take on thousands of years of recorded stories. In one segment, Brooks plays Moses, receiving a stone tablet with 15 commandments from God, played by Carl Reiner. However, he drops the tablet on his way to the people, turning 15 commandments into the 10 we know today. Another takes on Julius Caesar, but Caesar enters his palace through the iconic Las Vegas casino. The Part 1 at the end of the title was always meant to be a joke. The film ends with a fake sequel trailer, teasing History of the World Part 2. But it took 42 years for Hitler on Ice to finally make its way to our silver screens. But now that it's out, how does it compare to the original? Well, the original was never included amongst Brooks' most revered works. It's not bad by any means. A lot of the jokes land and only a few don't. Orson Welles is the narrator, a job Brooks paid him $25,000 in cash for after Welles' agents refused to let him take part. According to Brooks, that was too much.
I paid him for 5 days, like $5,000 a day, right? So he started at to test his voice out. This is about 10 to 9 in the morning. By 11:30, 12 o'clock, he had done all of the narration. It was all perfect. He said, any changes, I'll do anything you want, Mel. I said, it's flat out perfect. What do you know? I said, oh my God, I could have paid you $5,000.
While Welles' narration is strong, many of my issues with the 1981 film arise from its length, which feels both too long and too short. In anthology films, it's important to only stick on a segment as long as it serves its purpose. However, because the 90-minute film only really tackles a handful of time periods, each one overstays its welcome, with many divulging into a madcap chase at the end. It's fine, but I couldn't help but want more. Luckily, the series fixes these issues while introducing new ones. The name of the game this time is Quantity. Hulu ordered an 8-episode series for Part 2, and it's about 6 episodes too long. In addition to the mass amount of content, the show seems focused on jamming each episode to the brim with the guest star. It's a who's who of popular stars today, with many of the people featured being younger than the 1981 film itself. But ultimately, none of this matters as long as it's funny. And is it? For me, it's a resounding yes. There are a whole team of writers this time, including Mel Brooks. But when the original was solely Brooks, the addition of new faces is welcome. The segments come fast and leave early too. Some of my favorites include a group of cave women who learn how to create fire as a way to light their joints, Shakespeare's writing room, in which he bumbles around and takes credit for the inventions of his staff writers, and a play on the building of the pyramids, which asks the question, what if the people who built the pyramids were a part of a pyramid scheme? But honestly, I found at least half of the segments good, which is a rare feat for such a long series. One of the best aspects of the show is how it embraces the television medium. While History of the World Part 1 acts as a love letter to the great historical epics of the 50s and 60s, Part 2 finds its inspiration almost everywhere. One recurring segment tells the story of Shirley Chisholm, reimagining it as a sitcom from the early 70s. The segments relating to Jesus and the Apostles are told as though they're an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Sigmund Freud's Masterclass is framed as though it's an episode of, well, Masterclass.
And this is my mommy class.
While people can argue whether or not this series was needed at all, it's nice to see Mel Brooks pop up throughout the show, providing the iconic narration he asked Wells to provide over 40 years earlier. And if anything, this series serves as a perfect end to the legacy of such an iconic Hollywood comedian. The sheer amount of guest stars can be a tad much, but can you blame them? Here are hundreds of people committed to working on a project by the man that has changed comedy landscape for good. The series is a tribute, told by people who tell jokes in a post-Brooks world. In many ways, I prefer the sequel to the original, something I never thought I would say. But the sequel is told with so much heart and earnestness that you can't help but enjoy it, even when you're rolling your eyes at some of the more painful segments. Part 2 took 42 years to become a reality, which makes it the second longest time ever between an original and a subsequent sequel, right ahead of the 36 years between Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, and lagging behind the 64 years between Bambi and Bambi 2. But in many ways, I find it to be the most interesting legacy sequel of all time. It was told by a 96-year-old man, and more importantly, the people he's helped to inspire. When Brooks made History of the World Part 1, he wrote, produced, and directed it on his own. For a film that sets out to explain all of history, it's far from an all-encompassing perspective. Part 2 fixes that, adding in hundreds of voices and ultimately accomplishing what Mel set out to achieve decades ago. And while it may not always land, it's certainly worth your time. Until the next time, I'll see you at the movies.